Hi, how are you? Welcome back. And this is Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department, and welcome back to another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And to my left is my able-bodied Executive Officer, Captain Mark Livy, and together we'll be giving you a brief status update on things for the month of December and status of the police department and some things and activities that are ongoing. So first of all, I want to say that we are well into the budget season, our budget preparation season, which really begins, folks, in late July. And the captain, myself, and our budget team, we start putting together the three budgets that comprise the one overall budget of the police department. That's the police department proper, it's the budget for Wolfeboro Central Dispatch, and the budget for our animal control functions. So right now we're still involved in that budget process. We're finished with right now the presentations to the budget committee for the operating budget. Now comes the capital outlay and any warrant articles that'll be presented. Included in this year's budget request is going to be a new police cruiser. I want to just talk a little bit about that. It's obviously cruisers. That's really our mainstay. That's how we get to calls for service. And we're authorized 11 cruisers. But right now we have 8 in service. We did purchase one last year through the Police Special Detail revolving account, which had zero impact on the tax base in Wolfeboro, and that's because it came out of the Police Special Detail revolving account. The bad news is, so that was a good thing, and that vehicle right now is being outfitted and readied for service. The bad news is that I lost 3 vehicles last year due to significant rust issues. So we're down 3 vehicles. So even though we have 8 in service right now, we just did take 1 in possession. It is yet to enter service. More bad news, I'm going to lose another vehicle in April, so it's going to bring me back from 9 to 8 vehicles. So the bottom line, folks, is I only have 8 vehicles in service. I need another 3 more. I need 11 vehicles. That's the purpose of this request. That the vehicles serve a number of purposes. Obviously, it gets the patrol division to and from their various calls for service. But vehicle is needed by the detective, the supervisors. Need a vehicle so they get to and from their place of duty. The school resource officer has a vehicle assigned up at the school at all times, and that's for various police purposes. These vehicles are really our lifeline, right? This is how we get to and from calls for service, how we transport prisoners to and from various locations, how personnel get to training, how personnel get to the police academy for various functions, and so this is critical. This is a critical need. We're not sure how that is going to work itself out just yet. More to follow on this, so just stay tuned. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about, and something that folks may not necessarily be very aware of, is that Wolfeboro Central Dispatch, which is an integral part of the Wolfeboro Police Department, is really the first contact most folks have with the Wolfeboro Police Department when they're calling in for service, or calling in for a request, or asking for assistance, either fire, police, or EMS. But Wolfeboro Central Dispatch also serves as your primary point of contact for after-hours response from the electric department, after-hours response for water and sewer issues. They are the emergency lifeline, if you will, for a lot of folks during times of crisis. And they answer and they respond to a lot of calls for service. Last year, 2018 numbers, were just over 54,000 calls for service. Now, that includes walk-ins, people seeking assistance, and everything else, but 54,000, just over 54,000. It was 54,144 when the numbers were finalized in January of this year. That's a lot of calls for service. So this year, I think year to date right now, we're somewhere around 43,000 in that neighborhood, and we still haven't finished the year. And of course, those calls are finalized only as of October. So with 2 months still left in the reporting season, I think we're going to be over the 54,000 calls for service we had last year in the central dispatch, but time will tell. Another function that folks don't necessarily know that we do is animal control. So I want to talk a little bit about that. We have an animal control section. It has a sworn animal control officer, and that's Earl Clough. He does a fantastic job, folks. He's well trained. He's a graduate of the Animal Control Academy down at the University of New Hampshire through their agriculture program. And he's been serving in this capacity for the better part of 15 or so years. He's been with us a long time. He does a really nice job. He has a great relationship with the Humane Society. And that's who we use as our animal care provider when we police up dogs and cats and other stray animals. Earl will also do other types of animal control and nuisance calls when necessary. And just putting it into perspective, last year we had 691 animal calls for service. Now, not all of those were necessarily handled by Earl. Some of them may have been handled by officers. But that's a lot of animal calls, 691. That's a lot of calls for service, and of that, approximately 110 resulted in Earl Clough taking some sort of action and an incident report being opened up. So 110 reports by that one officer throughout the course of the year, 691 calls for service. That's a lot of activity for one individual. And of course, he had one assist in there last year for an officer. I just don't know the details about that, but that's really important. So that was obviously a criminal matter that he assisted with. So again, a lot of activity for that ACO, a lot of activity relative to animal calls coming in. These are really important functions. I think right now we're up to 93 or 94 incident reports filed by Earl Clough. So that means that there was 93 incidents that garnered some sort of investigation, possibly civil forfeiture or criminal summons for something that was occurring with animals. So again, this is one of our responsibilities. We take it very seriously. Earl is a very busy individual and is handling a lot of calls. And remember, he's on call 24 hours a day. He's on call 24 hours a day, right? He has no relief in there. If he does take a vacation, which is seldom, then we have a relationship with the animal control officer from OSPI who comes down to cover his calls for service, and vice versa when that individual up in OSPI takes vacation. So it's a quid pro quo in that regard. So just want to talk a little bit about some other broader statistics. Last year, 2018 numbers, we had approximately 326 arrests. We had another 15 or so felony indictments, which is a type of arrest, added to that number, and of which about 110 or so of those cases, both at the misdemeanor and felony level, were juvenile matters. So again, there's a lot of activity occurring, a lot of juvenile activity occurring. Relative to incidents, we had right around 1,000 criminal incidents that occurred, and within those incidents, well over 1,000 offenses occurring. So an incident is one event, but there might be multiple crimes within that one incident. So a good example here would be, okay, you have a burglary. That's the call. It's one incident, that's the call, but within that burglary there may have been criminal trespass, criminal mischief, could have been theft, could have been an assault, could have been other crimes that were committed during that burglary. So those would all be individual offenses. So again, that's a lot of activity for a small town, and this has been routine. This has been like this for about the last 10 years or so. So there's a lot of activity occurring in Wolfeboro, and tying this all back toward the budget. We do general law enforcement operations, and within those general law enforcement operations, they have to be resourced in some fashion. Hence the need for a cruiser, hence the need for police radars, hence the need for police radio, so forth and so on. These things have to be maintained. They have to be replaced when they wear out. And so the Wolfeboro Police Department is always very grateful for the citizens in supporting our budget. We're striving to be the very best police department we possibly can, realizing that our requests have an impact on the tax base, and we want to obviously keep that impact as low as we possibly can. So please understand that I weigh this very heavily, as does the captain, before we make any recommendations to our Honorable Board of Selectmen or to the Honorable Budget Committee. And so far I'm happy to report that all of our requests have been supported by both organizations at this point in time, as of course the Wolfeboro Police Commission. And I briefed them first on everything and get their approval before we send it off to the other two committees. So having said that, now I just want to turn it over to Captain Mark Livy for his status update on the police department and operations. Captain?
Yes. Thanks, Chief. Just one thing with the budget that I'll add on to that. So when you, I think it's in February when it's the public hearing, and especially in December when everyone else does see it on TV, you will see I want to make sure you understand the number and what's associated with the police department, with communications and the animal control. And you'll see a large number with non-discretionary with our budget, which comes up to about $174,000. Now let's explain what is non-discretionary. That is your hourly wages. That is your medicals. That is something that's kind of out of our hands.
Yeah, those numbers are set either by the federal government in the form of workers' comp or Social Security, or they reflect the new costs of health insurance and dental insurance and so forth and so on.
Yes, which the town gives us those numbers. We also have discretionary. Now that is that is in our control. So our discretionary is only up out of all three budgets $5,100. That's very minimum. Really, dispatch is up $8,000, and police department is down $3,000. So that's where we get the 5,100. But the part that's always missing, and sometimes you don't see, is what the actual revenue that comes in with the police department. And this is revenue, not revenue, we're talking like citations, town ordinances. We don't see that. The police department does not see any of that money. The citations like speeding on the road, of the roadways, that goes all to the state. So that doesn't come back to the town. Town ordinances that are cited, that goes back to the general fund. That does not come back to the Wolfeboro Police Department and shows revenue on that end. But what does is that we have some state grants out there. We have a state grant with the state of New Hampshire, which is $60,000 that we get every year. So that's guaranteed. We get that right now, $60,000. So that does offset what we talked about last year, which was our addition to the 14th officer. So that kind of offsets that much the money. Granted, there's medical and insurance and all that good stuff, so that's your added funds to that, and that's what you'll see this year, a piece of it, of the $174,000. We also have a contract with the SAU 49 with the school resource officer that's up at the school there every day for 180 days. So that is, on average, we'll get back around $55,000. Why I say on average, well, look at this. If he's not in the school, he's out training, or as Officer Llewellyn does, he's the juvenile officer, he goes up to the court to handle some things, or he takes a vacation, we don't get paid for that day, which is understandable. If he's not up there.
And that's pursuant to the contract.
Yeah, and that's a contract that's out there that's public, so anyone can review it and see it. But if you look at that, that's guaranteed $115,000. That comes back as revenue to the police department. So that offsets that $174,000 that you see, that large number of non-discretionary. So that knocks it down to, you're looking probably at like $65,000. But you got to remember this: we have a union contract. Now the chief, myself, our executive secretary Sherry Moore, is not a part of the union. So you won't see our numbers with the union in the hourly wages. So the union had a contract last year that was good for 4 years. So that's already been voted on last year. It was approved by the town voters. So you'll see a certain number that's already been voted on last year, which I think is this year is about 59,000 and change. So if you look at that, that's already in that budget for the 174, and you're looking at 115 of revenue that comes back. You're only looking at about $3,100 that's actually non-discretionary, that's addition to the revenue that you do see. I just wanted to make sure everyone understands that there is revenue. There's other revenue, but those come and go depending on the year and what we get. But though the ones that I did describe there as the state grant that comes from the state of New Hampshire and the school resource are from the SAU 49, those are guaranteed money. That's coming in as revenue that offsets our the tax base. So if you look at it, that number, yes, it's large, but it really is not that large with that revenue that does come back. We do look at that, and we make sure we're not going over and have these additions, so it does impact the tax base. Hey, we both live here in this town, so so we understand it. But let's move on to the operation. Yeah. So the operation of what's going on this year. So dispatch, we're moving smoothly. We're getting to the new year. It's coming into Christmas, New Year's, and New Year's is. So we got some activities in town for New Year's Eve that day. I believe it's from 10 to 2.
That's correct.
10 a.m. to 2.
Oh, you're right. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
2 p.m. or it might go a little bit later than that to 4. I don't have the exact times. Last night, first night. But then there are fireworks that night around 6 o'clock, I believe. But yeah, you'll see a bunch of police presence in the general area, because I know you'll have a lot of kids walking to certain venues, certain buildings, town hall. I think they use some of Brewster Academy's buildings for some venues that are going on. But you can always check all those out at the Chamber of Commerce. They'll have all what's going on that day, I believe, right? So that's going into December. But so that's dispatch will be busy. So. With the police department, so an update on Officer Church. We're in December, so he only has 4 more weeks left. It's amazing. We started this with 16 weeks. So I think it's less than that. I think it's maybe 3 weeks when we get in December 1st there, because he graduates on December 20th, which is that Friday, and that week prior to that is a very... I think he can come home Thursday. They got their finals on that Wednesday, which is a very stressful time, will be for him. Basically, it's the whole 16 weeks in one test after you've taken all the other tests. So that's a stressful week for him on that Wednesday. Once you pass that, he's walking on that Friday. I believe that's at 2 o'clock at the police academy. So we will be present there. So check out our Facebook page on that. Anything else? I mean, you have your state grants that are out. So we do have those every month, certain days that they require us out there. So you'll see the patrol cars making their stops out there for, most likely it's going to be for speeds, the grant safe commute that's out there. Other than that, I don't have anything else to report on from that.
I just want to talk a little bit about the academy and what the captain said. 16 weeks is a long time, folks. And please understand that the New Hampshire Police Academy, unlike, for example, Massachusetts or Maine, our police academy is paramilitary. This is not easy. This is basic training, basic military training, if you will, for lack of a better term, for 16 weeks, and they do not let up for 1 minute. It is mentally demanding, it's academically demanding, and it's physically demanding. It is very physical, and there's a lot of skills being taught. There's a lot of knowledge being put forth. There are tests. There are physical tests. There are written exams. There are essay exams. And you're being measured and tested literally every day. It is really demanding. And young Officer Church right now is doing well. And we suspect that you will be graduating right on time on 20 December. And of course, both the captain and I will be present for that graduation. But when you see him, congratulate him, because this is quite an accomplishment. And yeah, it's and when when you graduate from the academy too, the nice thing is you have almost an associate's degree in criminal justice. So that there's a lot of college level academics that are being put forth.
Yeah, one other thing. So January 4th, we have a PT test, was a physical agility test for our opening spot for the police department. So right now we have, that does close on January 1st, and right now we have 46 resumes. So that's a good amount. Very good. So we have a lot of interest in our department, which is nice to see. So it will be a busy month in January, because the oral boards will be the following week. We'll probably have 2 days with that many resumes, depending on how many come out of the physical agility test. So just wanted to mention that. So going forward.
Thanks. One last thing too. If you're really up for a challenge, if you're a young man or woman out there, and you have an inclination to be a police officer, I want to encourage you to come on down to the police department, fill out a job application, fill out a request, get in touch with the captain, and get your name on the list. I have some officers that I suspect will be retiring within the next year or so. We'd like to maintain a list of interested applicants. But I will tell you right now, this job is not for everyone. You heard me talk a little bit about the police academy. It's academically challenging. It's physically challenging. It's demanding. This profession is very demanding, but I think it's a great profession. And but it's not for everybody. But if you're up for a challenge, you want a challenge, please, I encourage you to come on down. We're looking for a few good men and women to be part of our organization, and I think it has a very competitive benefits package, very competitive retirement package. And I think the Wolfeboro Police Department is recognized as a top-notch law enforcement organization within the state of New Hampshire. And we're on the cutting edge of a lot of technology, on the cutting edge of a lot of operational initiatives. So please come. If you want to be part of our team, please come on down and be part of our team. Thank you very much. Captain.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like he said, if you know somebody that's interested in becoming a police officer, getting in this career, please send your cover letter and resume to my email or the chief's email. You can get that on our webpage or Facebook. It's all there. And we'll go from there, get ready for the PT test.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. That completes our segment of Coffee and Connections with your chief. Please stand by for the safety tip of the month. I'm Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department. On behalf of myself and Captain Mark Livy, my executive officer, we thank you for tuning in, and Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Hi, how are you? I'm Chief Dean Rondeau, and welcome back to Coffee and Connections with the Chief, and this is your safety tip for the month of December. So a couple of things, folks. Remember, winter begins on 21 December. And welcome to the Northeast. We know it's going to be bad. We know it's going to be sloppy. I want to talk a little bit about four-wheel drive operation. And I see this a lot, and I see it especially with the older generation, the older folks that are my age and older, that may not necessarily be familiar with four-wheel drives. And so the modern day four-wheel drives are all push-button activated. You do not have to get out and lock the hubs like you had to way back in the 80s. The old Chevy Blazers or the Ford Broncos, you had to go out and you had to lock all four hubs in. You don't have to do that. There was also, back in the 80s and even in the 70s, when I was growing up, there was this understanding that you only put the vehicle in four-wheel drive and if you're absolutely stuck and can't go anywhere. And that was because of the technology at the time wasn't as good as we have today. You don't have to do that today. Today, If you think you're losing traction, if you want to get better traction, a lot of vehicles have all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive high, four-wheel drive low. You just simply put it either into all-wheel drive by pushing a button or put it into four-wheel drive high, and you're going to be fine. You're going to improve your traction. You're going to be able to get out of any bad situation that you're in. You're going to be able to improve your traction on the roadway. Don't wait until you get stuck, because once you get stuck, it's probably too late. Okay, and I see it all the time on the various hills that we have here in Wolfeboro and elsewhere, where folks are sliding all over the road, up the hill or down the hill, and end up getting into a crash or a mishap. And I'll ask them, how come you didn't put this in? You have four-wheel drive. How come you didn't put it in four-wheel drive? And they'll say, well, because my husband or my boyfriend told me not to put it into four-wheel drive unless I get absolutely stuck. Or somebody will say, well, that's the understanding I had. I wasn't supposed to put it in four-wheel drive unless I was absolutely stuck. No, stop. Wrong answer. You have it to improve traction, so use it. Now, having said that, I will tell you that just because you have better traction doesn't mean that you have any better braking on wet or slippery or icy roads. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, yes, you have better traction. You don't have any better braking. Okay, so please, here's the bottom line. Bottom line up front, right? If you have four-wheel drive and you think you're slipping, put it in either all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive and use it to improve your traction. Go slow, go steady. Slow and steady wins the race, because you're not going to have any better braking with four-wheel drive than you do with two-wheel drive. Okay, thank you very much. That was your safety tip of the month for December, and I will see you next month. And as always, be safe, stay alert, stay alive, keep your eye on the weather, and Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.